Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
That was Mika Brzezinski on MSNBC's Morning Joe telling the audience that they went to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President-elect Donald Trump. The move, both visiting Trump in Florida and announcing it to their audience, is now backfiring, not just on the show, but on the network as ratings have plummeted. But before we get to that, here is more from Joe Scarborough on the visit.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications.
Throughout the segment, they address their audience directly. They confront perhaps their failures from the past, although failures might be too strong of a word to use there. And they wondered, with impressive and maybe delusional optimism, of what another 4 years under Trump could actually be like. On one hand, I think they're right to an extent. Partisan politics are exhausting for everyone. It requires constantly increasing outputs of energy, not just from the people on the screens, but from the people watching them. Even when you're not watching, you are fuming. On the left, people are upset because things didn't go their way and they're scared. On the right, people are still upset somehow. It's almost as if they have nowhere to direct their anger anymore, and they've become so accustomed to being angry all the time. They're addicted to that feeling. Some of the more extreme people on the right really seem to want some kind of partisan confrontation, something explosive. They were so ready to feel victimized all over again when Kamala Harris won the presidency. But when their guy won and the people on the left swallowed the election results and accepted them for what they were, there was nowhere for that explosive energy to go.
Let's be very clear. This is legislation that targets white people. It is racial because the people who carry in the Capitol are primarily white. People who have CPLs are primarily white. And this is retaliation for the only demographic that overwhelmingly voted to support Donald Trump. And that is why it is being taken out on us, because you don't like us, and that's how it is. If we want to address gun violence, we would be focusing on the people who bring guns into communities and shoot people, like where I live in Detroit and where you represent, Stephanie Chang, which are overwhelmingly 13 to 34-year-old sub-Saharan African. Those are the people who...
Move on.
I am testifying.
Thank you for your testimony.
But we've gotten to the point where it's nearly impossible to have thoughtful political discussions with anyone who thinks or feels differently from us. Most of us just avoid those conversations altogether. But when history and science and even mathematics becomes political, what are we even doing? Later in the segment, Joe, who is a former Republican, by the way, claimed that they're not trying to normalize Donald Trump. But that particular clip that I just showed you reminded me of when Trump won the first time back in 2016. After running a campaign full of vitriol that we as a nation hadn't really seen come out of politicians in decades, he gave a decent victory speech. He wasn't yelling like he had been doing at his rallies. He wasn't attacking his enemies as he had been doing all over social media and in the news throughout his campaign. He wasn't boastful as we had all known him to be throughout his political and business and entertainment careers. So with all of that craziness, he gave one speech like a normal person, and suddenly the narrative was, oh, he's actually presidential. Maybe he won't be so bad after all. And then he was. He was all of the bad things that we thought he would be. The segment, as I said, has backfired since it aired on Monday. According to Mediaite, Mika and Joe announced their meeting with Trump at 6 a.m. By the next hour, 38% of viewers aged 25 to 54 had already stopped watching. And this is highly unusual for the show and for the network, which typically sees increasing viewership from 6 to 10 a.m. The show has turned off comments on its posts on X, and MSNBC hasn't posted clips from the show anywhere. Its social media comments on Instagram, however, confirmed that the show's and the network's viewers are dismayed, to put it lightly, with the quote-unquote new approach that Morning Joe will be taking, the condescending tone they perceive from the anchors, and the fact that despite what Joe Scarborough said, they do seem to be normalizing Trump his antics and his politics. Joe Scarborough is now acting as if Trump, who has said that he's seeking revenge on his enemies with this presidency, will somehow now be open to bridging gaps and compromising with people he either disagrees with or disrespects. Trump has nothing new to offer. He has been who he is for his whole life, and he's not going to suddenly change now. And we as viewers know that, but these are mainstream media anchors. They get paid millions of dollars to talk to millions of Americans every day. Their words matter, and yes, as journalists, a huge part of their job is to present the news as it is. You can pontificate later, but at least get the facts out first. Some journalists, in my opinion, are better at doing that than others, and neither Mika nor Joe were at the top of my list on that particular front. In the wake of Trump's victory, we're seeing many media personalities on the left struggling with how to move forward, including this network to an extent. I don't make any kind of high or important decisions around here, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but as a presenter, you have to constantly be thinking about what information you're presenting and how you're doing it. Is it helpful to people? Is it information that people should be aware of? Will you be able to do the story justice as far as representing it accurately and offering any kind of meaningful analysis on it? For me, if the answers to those questions are no, I'm grateful that I often have the option to just not cover a story. But not always. Sometimes you have to cover a story that maybe isn't doing much besides stressing out your audience because it is unfortunately relevant to the world and politics. Couple that with constantly fighting against an invisible algorithm for clicks and views because you need the money to keep your network up and running, and you get the modern day media landscape / hellscape. And with Trump, that has always been the case. He rode a wave of free media attention all the way to the presidency in 2016, and then he surfed that wave for years, maintaining cultural and political relevancy even after he had been voted out of office. Now he's the president-elect, so by definition, everything he says and does is news. We have to cover him now, but he also comes with an entourage of attention seekers who are hoping their next viral moment will land them a literal cabinet position in the White House. The sad reality is that it might, because that's the world we're currently living in. I specifically didn't cover a story today about someone who is trying to do exactly that because I couldn't stomach the complicity. I'm the kind of person who, if you're an obvious attention seeker, I won't make eye contact with you. If you drive past me in a Lambo revving your engine, I am not looking over. I'm not going to do that for you. And doing a job like this one, it's something you have to grapple with to a certain extent every single day. So the media is changing, as it probably should. I think I've said it before that if anything good comes out of this incoming presidency, it's that a lot of things that were overdue for overhauls finally get the reset that they've long needed. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.